Hi there, so this is Friday's psychology lesson, so make sure you are watching these and accessing them in the appropriate order. You need to have done Thursday's lesson, which was about understanding what the learning theory of attachment is. You clearly need to have done that before you can start picking it apart and evaluating it, and that's the focus of this lesson. So again, at appropriate times when I signal to do so, pause the video and complete the tasks. So you will need to have your file and your knowledge organizer in front of you for this. Okay, so our retrieval is exactly that. It's filling in the gaps from the knowledge organizer. So don't look at it for now, and just on a blank piece of paper, jot down what should go into those blanked out sections. And then when you've had a good go and you really have retrieved your knowledge, don't be tempted to just take a shortcut and look in your knowledge organizer, because that's not helping encode it into your long-term memory. And that's what we're trying to do. Then we'll compare it against our knowledge organizer and see how we got on. So there's a few things on there. We need an explanation as best we can from yesterday's learning of how classical and operant conditioning might explain why attachments form. We need to fill in our table, which we were looking at just yesterday. So first of all, apply it to Pavlov's dogs, then apply it to attachment, and then going back to last week's learning, retrieving that as well, what would be the definitions for those terms there. Critical period might be the tricky one. We haven't talked at length about that yet, but you may well have read it in amongst the notes I've asked you to read so far, so you could have a go. Okay, so pause the video and have a good try at that. And in terms of checking your answers for that retrieval task, you've got your knowledge organizer. I've not displayed it on the screen here for you. Check it against your knowledge organizer. What did you miss? What key terms did you forget? What detail was lacking? Or did you do fabulously well, in which case, well done. That suggests you've already started self-checking and testing your knowledge on this using those flashcards, which is what it's all about. This is just a reminder here. I've put that screenshot again of the video clip. As part of yesterday's lesson, you should have watched that. And that gave you a little bit of context about Harlow's monkeys. Now, this is where we're going to start putting our evaluation hats on. Because Harlow's research with those rhesus monkeys, remember, devil's in the detail for these types of questions. Harlow is one of the studies we've got to know in as much detail as we can. So detail like the fact it took place in a lab and they were rhesus monkeys is the kind of detail we're talking about. It's on your knowledge organizer. So Harlow's monkeys is going to help us to evaluate, because as you will have seen from that video, one of the big findings of these monkeys that had been separated from their mother, their primary caregiver, was of course the level of distress that we saw. But then when they were offered the surrogate mothers, as we call them, which were just, one was a wire shape, similar-ish shape to a monkey, that gave food. So it had the little tube that when the monkey approached it, it would release milk. The other surrogate mother offered comfort because it was covered in that nice soft cloth type material that an infant monkey would be able to associate with its mother's fur. So one giving just food, one giving just comfort. And what we found time and time again with these infant monkeys is they chose the comfort over the food. They chose the soft covered cloth monkey over the one that produced the food. Now that means learning theory must be wrong then. Everything that you looked at yesterday about the idea that you've learned to form an attachment because you've associated your mother with the food, and it's all about that primary drive. Remember that word there, primary and secondary drive. It's all about that primary drive of hunger, and that's why you've attached. Well, no, not when we look at monkeys, not according to Harlow. The monkeys' comfort was way more important than food. So that's why Harlow's useful for us. It tells us something about attachments. It also tells us something about animal attachment behaviour. When we see just how distressed, and for that reason we can say this study was unethical, but when we see just how distressed those monkeys were at separation. So Having watched that video yesterday, and there's nothing to stop you go back and watch it again if you need your mind refreshing on that, I'd like you to create a summary card. We've done these for lots of the important studies, and they're really useful for you to keep checking your knowledge and making sure you've memorized and learned that detail. So just like we've done before, at the top you put what topic this is linked to. So of course this is learning theory of attachment. You put the psychologist's name, not your name, so we're going to put Harlow. What was Harlow trying to investigate? What was his aim? What method, procedure did he use? So where did it take place? What type of monkeys did he use? What did he set up? You know, what about the surrogate mothers, the cloth, the wire? That's where we put all that detail about what they actually did. Then what did they find? And as a result of that, what conclusions can we draw? And then we're going to start to think about our evaluation as well. Because can we say that humans are the same as monkeys? Well, evolutionary theory tells us we're going to have an awful lot in common. But monkey behaviour, when isolated, when in a lab environment, separated from mother, is probably not going to tell us sufficiently about normal human behaviour. Because we've got a very specific setup there, haven't we? So we can evaluate this. We can also say how unethical it was, as I mentioned before. So spend some time, again, you've got your textbook, you've got that video clip you might want to just quickly re-watch. Spend some time creating yourself a summary card for Harlow because it's important, and we'll see in a minute how we can use it. So having done that, I've shared with you the Word document that I've just done a screenshot of here. So it's called Harlow's Monkeys on your assignment. And again, it's prompting you to think, right, what did Harlow do? So just very briefly, what was the description of Harlow's experiment? What would learning theory predict would happen? If learning theory is right, what would we have expected to see happen to those monkeys? Which of the surrogate mothers would we have expected them to go to? And then compare that with what did happen. And then it allows you to therefore think about how we might use Harlow to evaluate learning theory. So we're using one piece of research to challenge and contradict another. And when we're able to start doing that, that's when we're really hitting the high marks in our answers. Okay, which is why I've sort of scaffolded it this way. So pause me, complete that, spend some time on that. Now this is just a reminder, I'm not going to go through this now because only a day has passed, and obviously when I've recorded this I haven't yet gathered your responses from you. But you'll remember at the end of Thursday's lesson I asked you to complete that exam question. Well, there were 2 exam questions. This is a reminder to send it to me because I'm not going to do the feedback until I've gathered all of your answers, and then I'll do some whole class feedback, okay? But we are going to do a similar question now, or rather you are. So you're going to, and again this can be done in your exercise book, I want us to get lots of practice at doing these application questions. So this time we've got Larry and he's 8 months old. Now as soon as I see that, I should be thinking, right, what do I know? What, according to Schafer and Emerson, because this question might be about something different, but I want to bring in any relevant knowledge I have. So I'm breaking the question down. What did Schafer and Emerson say the stage would be at 8 months old? So we had 0 to 2 months was asocial. We had 2 to 7 was indiscriminate. By the time we're getting to 7, 8 months old, we're starting to see specific attachment. So I would annotate that. I would actually write that onto my, if I had this in front of me, if you've got a printer, great. If not, you could jot that down. What would we pull out? So we'd pull out Schafer and Emerson, likely to be at, he says that Larry is likely to be at the specific attachment stage. His dad's much more involved with his son, playing with him regularly every day. But recently he's noticed that Larry tends to go to his mummy for comfort when he's distressed. So he sometimes feels a bit left out and worries that he's not being a proper dad. Use psychological research. Explain why his dad has no need to worry. So I think I'd want to bring in Schafer and Emerson, stages of attachment, and why he doesn't need to worry. There are alternative approaches to answering this question, and it is possible to bring in learning theory as well. So I'm just going to leave that with you and leave you to have a go at that. As an exam question, that was 6 marks, but really what I want you to do is plan out what needs to go into that, okay, and try and develop some of those points. So that's your other task for this lesson.